where we have a lot of guys who have Florida ties, and we can get into that right now. About a dozen of them have Florida ties, so it'd be like a homecoming game going down there for them. We saw Cameron Simon Craig say everybody's in for tickets. He kind of took me back in the day when we went and played down in Florida State and at Florida and whatever other UCF I think we played at, South Florida I think we played at, and
Yeah.
all of the Florida guys will be requesting those tickets from those teammates. So big games I think is going to be even just trying to get good games. I think from Shador's standpoint, he's going to try to get good games for his Florida receivers, which
Yeah.
you have a bit of out there. So, what are your comments and your thoughts on the Florida guys going back home?
Yeah, this is those games that those Florida guys are going to, somebody like Silman Craig and saying, "Hey, come on, man, you're from Alabama. You don't need these tickets. My
Yes,
family needs them," and going to some
yes.
guys from Ohio or whatever and saying, "Let me have these tickets." But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how big of a factor that is. Covering Colorado all these years, they've never had a bunch of Colorado guys on the team. They've always been
Mhm.
very heavy California and Texas, and throughout the Pac-12 years, it was always a huge deal. Half the team from California, and every year, whenever they're going to USC or UCLA, it's like, oh man, we're so excited to go home, and then they would go out and get their butt kicked in California. So, that didn't really seem to matter as much. So I'm curious to see how these Florida guys are impacted
Oh,
by going home.
it's gonna be
And
it's totally different going back to Florida, dog.
yeah,
It's
well,
totally. I don't know whether those California guys were actually in
yeah,
their area where they was going back home to, or had some pride in it. But you going back to Florida, you're gonna have. And I was gonna say even Alabama might not be far enough to be requesting tickets,
yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
sure Cameron Simon Craig family is gonna be, even more excited to take a trip to Florida rather than, getting on the plane to go to Colorado as far as
right,
distance and time
yeah.
goes. But I think those Florida guys are going to take pride in playing in front of their family members and friends.
Yeah, and Coach Prime would sit there and tell me, "Oh yeah, the Florida boys are different," and because he's always,
Yes,
pumping up his Florida guys, and obviously has a lot of pride in his home state as he should. And
yeah.
I'm curious to see what it looks like. I've never covered a college football game in Florida. I'm not sure if I've ever covered a game
Oh,
involving a
okay.
teன் Florida. So
Oh, it's going down then,
yeah,
Brian. It's
the
going
only
down in a major way.
the only sporting event I've ever covered in Florida was an NCAA tournament game between CU and Pitt. And so, yeah, I've never covered a football game down there, so I'm curious to see what that's going to look like. But I would imagine there's a lot of those guys that know each other on both
Yes.
these teams because they've been on 7-on-7s or things like that, and so you're always going to have that side of it as well. But you're right. I mean, Shador, not from there, but he knows LeJohntay is, and he knows that Travis, even though went to a Georgia high school, grew up there. Jimmy Horn's from there, and so
Yes.
I would look for some of those guys. They're great players anyway, but I would look for some of those guys to step up this week.
So about, I guess I'll go down a quick list real quick. Isaiah Augustos from Naples, Florida. Ben Boozy, Naples, Florida. Jeremiah Brown from Carrollville, Madison County, Florida. Johnny Chainsaw Cheney,
Mhm.
Pope, Florida. Cash Cleveland played at IMG Academy. Ronald Coleman from Jacksonville. Uh, he transferred from Mississippi State. He's from Florida. Brendan Gant from Lakeland, Florida.
Mhm.
Kay Garcia from Fort Myers, Coach Prime hometown. Kareem Harden from Fort Lauderdale. Isaiah Hodge from Hollywood, Florida. Jimmy Horn Jr. from Sanford, Florida, or Seminole, as they might call them, or the Nook. Travis J. from Greenville, Florida, Madison County. Peyton Kirkland, Orlando, Florida. Gabe Landers, Olive Branch, Mississippi, but he played at IMG Academy in Florida. Angel Lopez from Gadsden County, Florida. Tristan Muriels played at Clearwater Academy in Florida. Malachi Murphy is from Bradford, Florida. Dominic Ponder, Opalaka, Kerosene, Florida. Jordan Seaton, of course, played at IMG Academy.
Yeah.
Taufik Thomas from Tampa, Florida. Saad Wasim from Opopka, Florida. Jalen Wester, Palmetto, his brother also, LeJohntay. Charlie Williams, the tight end. He played at IMG Academy, but he's from Colorado, of course.
Yeah.
So all those guys with Florida ties, and you can't forget Travis Hunter, who's originally from Florida, and his dad still lives in Florida. So I'm sure he's going to
Yeah.
come deep out there.
Where's
And really
you since
make
you
it
have
work.
that in front of you? Where's Levante Bentley from?
Bentley is from Alabama.
Is he
He's
okay?
from Birmingham, Jackson
Okay.
Olin High School. I think he's actually from right outside of Birmingham in Bessemer. I don't want to be wrong
Okay.
about that. Don't get me, Levante.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
was just curious. I knew he was from the South somewhere, but yeah.
yeah,
And even you mentioned all the Florida guys. There's a lot more guys that are from the South, and you correctly pointed out that Alabama is not that far from Florida. That's a doable
Georgia's not
drive,
that
and so
far. Yep,
Georgia, the Carolinas, and so yeah, you have a lot of those guys that are from that region of the country that they're gonna be excited to go back down to the South, and so yeah, it's gonna be an interesting matchup because of that, and I think there's a lot of pride in being from down there, and we're
right.
going to see that probably on Saturday.
And also, can't forget about the coaches, as you mentioned, Coach
Yep.
Prime, the head coach being from Florida. Just off the top of my head, Coach Flea from Florida. Coach Warren Sapp, of course, played at Miami, Tampa. He's from Florida. Coach Damian Lewis played at Miami.
Yeah.
Coach David Kelly was the assistant head coach at UCF when Coach O'Leary was there. So he has the ties to Central Florida.